I never thought I'd be the type to sit here and tell people my story, but honestly, I'm at a kind of breaking point. My wife, Emily, and I had what I thought was a normal, steady relationship for years. We'd talk about the future, plan weddings, buy a house. I trusted her. Or at least I did until last week. It started with little things. She'd be secretive about her phone, always brushing me off when I asked who she was texting. She'd take calls hidden away in the bathroom or outside on the balcony, her voice low. I figured maybe it was just work stuff, but deep down I knew there was more. Something didn't sit right, especially when she started changing her routine. Longer business trips, late nights at meetings, and suddenly she was more busy than ever. I remember one particular evening, I was sitting on the couch, waiting for her to come home from her latest trip. She had just left 2 days prior and I was trying to relax, but my gut was twisting in knots. That's when I noticed it, an envelope tucked between the couch cushions, right where I sit every night. I hesitated, my fingers trembling as I pulled it out. The envelope was plain, but it was the receipt inside that made my stomach drop. It was dated just last week from a hotel I'd never been to. The receipt was for a night's stay and the room was paid in cash. That's strange, I thought, because Emily always uses her card. I looked closer and there was a line for a guest, with her boss's name, David. The hotel was in the city 20 miles from here, a place she'd never mentioned. My hands were slick with sweat as I stared at it. My mind raced. Why would she lie about a business trip? Why hide a hotel receipt? It was right there in my palm, undeniable. I could feel my heartbeat pounding in my ears. I stayed silent, feeling like my world was tilting off its axis. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, the way she'd lie to me, the secret calls, the hidden trips. When morning came, I decided I had to know the truth. I needed to confront her, but I also knew I wanted to catch her in the act if I could. I started digging through her stuff, checking her phone, her emails, looking for any more evidence. And I found more. Hidden messages, half-written emails with her boss, more receipts tucked away in the trash. I realized she'd been lying for months, maybe longer. She'd lied during our last few visits to her family, lied about where she was, who she was with. She had built a whole web of deception around herself, and I was just now waking up to it. I sat in my chair, trembling, trying to process everything. The air around me felt thick and heavy, like I was suffocating. I clenched my fists so tight my nails cut into my palms. I couldn't believe I missed all the signs, but now that I'd seen it clear as day, I knew I had to do something. The worst part, the betrayal wasn't just about her cheating. It was how she lied, how she hid her calls, how she thought she could get away with it. That's what made my blood boil. She deceived me, played me like a fool, and I wasn't going to let that slide. Not anymore. So here I am trying to figure out my next move. I don't trust her anymore, but I also don't want to screw up everything without thinking it through. I want my revenge, sure, but I want her to understand what she's lost. I want her to feel the same hurt she's caused me. I've got a plan. It's not complicated, but it's cruel enough to get her attention. I'm going to expose everything, her lies, the hotel, her secret calls, in a way she can't spin her way out of. I want her to see that I know, and I want her to realize she's lost her marriage because of her own greed and stupidity. But I'll tell you more about the plan in the next part. Right now, I just needed to get this off my chest. I need to make sense of it all, to put it into words. Because from here, I'm not just going to sit and wait for her to come home. No, I'm going to do something she'll never forget. I spent the next few days with my head spinning, trying to come up with a plan. Every time I thought about confronting her outright, my stomach clenched tighter. I knew she'd deny everything, spin lies, or turn it around on me. That's just her style, deflect, deceive, and keep the chaos going until she could manage to smooth things over. But I wasn't going to let her do that anymore. The evidence was in my hands and I was going to use it. First, I decided to gather more proof, more receipts, more messages, anything I could find. I went through her phone, her email, and her social media. I knew she had been hiding details about her trips, about David, and all the secret calls. I wanted everything in one place before I made my move. I couldn't afford a slip-up, not this time. Once I had enough, I started planning. I didn't want to blow up everything randomly. I wanted her to see I was serious, that I knew all her secrets and that I wasn't going to back down. That's when I came up with the idea to set a trap, something that would make her realize she'd gone too far. I scheduled a fake business trip of my own, pretending I was leaving town for a few days. I made sure I had an alibi, but mostly I wanted her to think I was gone. That's when I planned to confront her. I told myself I wouldn't be the one to start the fight, but I wanted her to catch me, maybe catch her in the act. The night I told her I was leaving, I felt a weird mixture of calm and rage. I watched her face as I packed my bag, pretending I didn't notice her shifting nervously. She looked anxious, more than usual, and I caught her glancing at her phone more often. That's when I knew I was close. In the days that followed, I kept close tabs. I'd check her social media, see if she was making any moves. I even planted a little GPS tracker on her car just to make sure she was sticking to her usual routes. I wanted to see if she'd go to the hotel again, meet with David, or do something suspicious. And sure enough, I saw her slipping out late one night, her phone glued to her ear. I watched her walk out the door, feeling a heat rise in my chest. My palms grew sweaty, but I stayed calm. I had everything I needed. Now I knew her routine, her betrayals, and how she thought she was untouchable. The big moment came when she called David in front of me, well, in front of my makeshift surveillance. I heard her whisper a few words, then a faint, unmistakable laugh. She was planning something, probably an after-hours rendezvous. I clenched my fists so hard I thought my nails might break the skin. That's when I realized I had her right where I wanted her. I sat on the couch, waiting for her to come back, and I felt a strange calm settle over me. This wasn't just about catching her cheating anymore. It was about making her see that I knew everything, her lies, her secret life, without her ability to spin her way out of it. When she finally returned, I was already in position, phone recording, ready to confront her. She looked surprised, nervous even, as if she knew she'd been caught but still believed she could lie her way out. I stared at her, feeling the weight of everything she'd hidden, everything she'd betrayed. "Who were you talking to last night?" I asked coldly, holding up the phone with the recording. "Looks like David, your boss. Care to explain?" Her face went pale, but she recovered quickly. "It's not what you think, it's just work stuff. I didn't mean for you to find out like this." "Oh, I think I found out enough," I said, voice low and tight. "You've been lying for months. The hotel receipt, the calls, everything. How could you do this?" She looked away, but I wasn't done. "You've been cheating on me, lying to my face, hiding your secret rendezvous, and you thought I wouldn't find out. Well, I did. And now you're going to see how I respond." I knew I had to be careful. The last thing I wanted was her to spin her story to make me out to be the villain. So I kept recording, kept my cool, and made sure she saw I was serious. I told her she had a choice: come clean now, or I'd expose everything to everyone. The night ended with her silent, her face a mix of guilt and terror. I left her standing there, knowing I had the evidence I needed. For the first time in years, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I wasn't about to let her keep playing her games. I was ready to take control. The next step, well, that's where the revenge gets real. I'll tell you all about it next. But for now, I needed her to know I was onto her and she couldn't escape the truth. That night after I confronted her, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept racing and my stomach was tied in knots. I knew I'd laid everything out, recorded her calls, had the receipts, and now I had her cornered. But I also knew I needed a plan that would hit her where it hurt the most, something she wouldn't be able to spin out of. I wasn't just after revenge for the betrayal. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she'd done, and to see that I was serious about ending this. The first thing I did was research her boss, David. I wanted to know his habits, his routines, if he had any vulnerabilities I could leverage. I found out he was a bit of a show-off, always posting selfies at fancy restaurants and bragging about his latest deals. That gave me an idea. If I could make him look bad, expose just enough of his arrogance, I could send her a message that she'd regret crossing me. But before I did anything public, I had a more personal move in mind. I wanted her to see that her lies had consequences. I decided to set a trap, one that would make her realize she couldn't keep hiding forever. I had already gathered enough evidence to humiliate her, but I wanted to make it sting. Something she'd never forget. Here, what I did. I created a fake social media profile, something that looked just like her. I used her photos, her name, everything. Then I started posting snippets of our conversations, her secret calls, and even the hotel receipt, just enough to make her panic. I even sent a few messages from her account to David, pretending to be her, saying she wanted to meet up again. I monitored her reactions closely. The moment she saw those messages, her face drained of color. She kept glancing at her phone, her hands trembling. I could see her trying to delete or block the account, but it was already too late. Her paranoia grew, and her lies began unraveling faster. The real blow came when I sent an anonymous message to her boss, revealing just enough details about their affair to make him think I knew everything. I told him I had evidence of their meetings and that I was planning to expose him if he didn't cut ties immediately. I knew this would stir up trouble for him, and the fact that I could do it from the shadows made me feel a sick kind of satisfaction. Next, I called her bluff. I sat her down and played her the recordings and showed her the fake messages. Her face twisted in shock and anger. "You've gone too far," she spat, voice trembling. "You're just trying to ruin me." "No," I said coldly, "I'm just showing you what happens when you cheat and lie. You thought you could hide all this forever, but I caught you. And now everyone will know how little you value this marriage." I saw tears well up in her eyes, but there was also a flicker of panic. I knew I had her cornered. Her carefully crafted facade of control was crumbling, and she knew it. The final piece of my plan was to let her stew in her own guilt. I told her I was going to send everything to her friends, her family, and her boss, that I had emails, messages, receipts, proof of everything. I wanted her to understand she had no way out. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and disgust. Satisfaction that I'd finally taken control, disgust at how far she'd gone. But I also knew I had to be careful. I didn't want to escalate things into a bigger mess. Just enough to make her realize her lies had consequences. So I sat there, watching her face contort as she realized her world was falling apart. And I knew then I had succeeded in my plan. It was only a matter of time before her life, her reputation, and her marriage would be irrevocably changed. Next, I'll tell you how I executed the final move and what happened afterward. But for now, I wanted to lay out my approach. The slow, calculated way I turned her deception against her and made her feel helpless. The morning after I set my plan in motion, I felt a strange sense of calm mixed with annoying anticipation. I had everything I needed: screenshots, recordings, and the fake social media profile I'd created. It was time to go all in. I knew that once I pressed send, there was no turning back. Her life, her reputation, our marriage, all of it would change forever. I made a copy of all the evidence, just in case I needed to reinforce my point later. Then I took a deep breath and started executing my final move. First, I sent the damning messages from the fake profile, messages to her boss, to her friends, even a few to her own social media contacts, hinting at her affair. I wanted her to feel the walls closing in, to see that her secret was no longer safe. Next, I sent the screenshots of our conversations and the hotel receipt to her closest friends and family with a brief note. "This is what I've been hiding from you. She's been lying for months." I knew it would hit them hard, especially her mother and sister. Once those messages went out, I knew everyone would be talking. I sat back and watched her reaction when she realized what I'd done. It was priceless, an expression of pure panic, eyes wide, mouth trembling. She tried to call me, but ignored her. Her hands were shaking as she grabbed her phone, scrolling through her notifications. The moment she saw the messages from her friends, her face went white. She yelled, "You did what? Are you serious? You're destroying everything." Her voice cracked, but I kept my composure. I wanted her to see I wasn't bluffing. "You betrayed me," I said flatly, "and I just made sure everyone else knows it. You can't hide from this anymore." Her shoulders slumped and she looked like she'd been physically punched. The realization hit her hard. Her carefully constructed lies were exposed and her world was collapsing around her. I told her, "This isn't just about the cheating. It's about how you lied to me for months, how you thought you could get away with it. Now everyone sees who you really are." She burst into tears, but I wasn't moved by her tears. The damage was done, but I wasn't finished. I wanted to make sure she understood her actions had consequences that couldn't be undone. I left her standing there, phone in hand, and I went out for a walk. I needed space to breathe, to let everything sink in. I knew she'd spend the day trying to spin her story, but it wouldn't work. The evidence was irrefutable. By the time I returned home, she was still on her phone, her face a mask of despair and fury. She looked at me, eyes glittering with tears, and spat, "You've ruined everything, just so you know I don't care. I'll find another way." Her voice was bitter, but I could see her unraveling. I looked at her coldly. "You can't lie your way out of this. You've lost everything, my trust, your reputation, our marriage. And honestly, I don't want to hear from you again until you're ready to own what you've done." That's when I handed her the keys to her car, the divorce papers I'd already prepared, and a simple statement: "The house is yours. I want you gone by tonight." She stared at me in disbelief, her hands trembling as she took the keys. "You're serious," she whispered. "You're really leaving?" "Yeah," I said, voice steady. "Because I refuse to be with someone who lies, cheats, and thinks she's above accountability. You made your choice, and I'm not going to be part of it anymore." She dropped the keys on the table, tears streaming down her face. I saw the realization dawn that I wasn't coming back, that I'd finally taken control. I felt a strange mix of relief and anger. I had done what I needed to do. As I walked out the door to start my new life, I knew the hardest part was over. But I also knew this was just the beginning. The fallout would be long and painful for her. She'd have to live with what she'd lost. And me? I was finally free. That's when I realized, sometimes the only way to truly move on is to take back your power. To show someone how much they've messed up, you have to make them see they're nothing without your trust. And I made sure she saw that loud and clear. The days that followed were a blur of legal paperwork, moving boxes, and a strange sense of clarity I hadn't felt in years. The house was empty except for my belongings, and every corner echoed with memories I was finally ready to leave behind. The moment I handed her the keys and signed the divorce papers, I felt a weight lift. It was as if the last of her grip on my life was slipping away. But the fallout wasn't as immediate or tidy as I'd hoped. Emily was frantic, calling, texting, begging. She tried every angle, claiming she loved me, saying she'd change, promising she'd fix everything. I listened to her, cold inside. I knew her game. She thought if she played the victim and pleaded, I'd come running back. But I wasn't interested in her sob stories anymore. I'd seen her true face, and I knew better than to fall for her lies again. The most surprising part was how everyone else reacted. Her friends, her family, those who knew the truth were sympathetic but also disappointed. They saw through her, knew her manipulations. Her mother was especially blunt. "You should have been honest from the start. Instead, you chose to lie and cheat. Now look where it got you." That hurt her more than any accusations I could throw. I felt a strange sense of power watching her unravel publicly, knowing I was the reason. That feeling of control, of having finally taken my life back, was intoxicating. I didn't gloat, at least. Not openly, but inside I reveled in her misery. She'd spent months building her lies, thinking she was untouchable. Now she saw she was. I also made sure to remove every trace of her from my life. I changed my passwords, blocked her on social media, and avoided places I knew she'd go. Her calls and messages became less frequent, then non-existent. I realized that, for me, the hardest part was learning to let go of the hope that she'd change. I'd spent so long trying to fix things, to believe she'd see reason. But now I knew I was better off without her. One thing I did was cut ties with her entirely. No more calls, no more texts. I blocked her number and deleted all shared contacts. I needed the distance to heal. Honestly, I felt a mix of relief and anger, relief that I was free, anger at her betrayal, but I knew I'd get past it. I had to. A week later, I booked a small trip for myself. I needed space to think, to breathe. I stayed in a quiet cabin by the lake, away from everything. The sound of the water, the fresh air, those simple things helped me reconnect with myself. For the first time in a long time, I felt hope creeping back in. Looking back, I realize I learned a lot from this ordeal. I learned how important it is to trust your instincts, to listen to those little red flags. I also learned that sometimes you have to take control because nobody else will. Revenge, in my case, was not about causing her pain, though she certainly felt some of that, but about reclaiming my dignity, my life, and my peace. I'd tell anyone in a similar situation, don't let betrayal define you. Take back your power no matter how messy or painful it gets. Sometimes the only way out is through. And once you do, you'll realize that you're stronger than you ever thought. Next, I want to share my final thoughts, what I'd advise anyone facing this kind of heartbreak, and how I finally moved on. But for now, I hope this gives clarity on how I turned the tables and started over. Looking back, I realized that what I went through changed me more than I thought possible. The betrayal was a sharp blow, but in a strange way, it forced me to confront what I truly valued and what I wouldn't stand for anymore. I learned that some betrayals cut deep, but they also offer a chance to rebuild stronger than before. It's never easy, and the pain lingers, but eventually, it fades into a lesson learned. The biggest realization I took from all this is that revenge isn't about destroying someone else. It's about reclaiming your sense of worth and dignity after someone has tried to take it from you. For me, that meant making her face the consequences of her actions and showing her that her lies couldn't keep her safe from the truth. More than anything, it was about closing that chapter and finally moving on. If I had one piece of advice for anyone in a similar boat, it's this: trust your instincts. Don't ignore the red flags. When something feels off, dig deeper. Because the longer you wait, the more you risk losing yourself in the process. And when you finally uncover the truth, don't hesitate. Take control, be decisive. Make it clear that your life is yours to command again. Now I won't pretend I'm perfect, I still have scars, but I've learned that healing isn't about forgetting. It's about accepting what happened, learning from it, and choosing to move forward. I've realized that sometimes the best revenge is simply walking away with your head held high. Because no matter how deep the betrayal, you're stronger than anyone who tries to tear you down. So, to anyone out there facing betrayal, remember this: your pain is valid, but it doesn't have to define you. You have the power to turn the page, to rebuild, and to find happiness again. It's not about revenge for revenge's sake. It's about reclaiming your life and refusing to let someone else dictate your future. And as I sit here, reflecting on everything I've been through, I know one thing for sure: I'm finally free. Free from lies, from betrayal, from the weight of someone else's deception. That freedom is what mattered most. Because in the end, the only person responsible for your happiness is you. And I chose to take that back.